All right, back at it. Athlete Builder Jim and Lucas have our next guest, Joe Kenn. And for a lot of the folks that listen to our show, any strength and conditioning coaches, collegiate coaches, pro coaches, they're going to recognize Joe Kenn's name right off the bat. Other folks, like high school coaches that are newer or the newer folks, may or may not. But when I looked at his resume, Joe played football at Wake Forest, has all the letters after his name, his undergrad to master's. And however you want to slice it and dice it, whether it's with the CSCS, the NSCA, the collegiate level, the college level, the pro level, he's worked at all those levels. And in each of those levels, every one of them, he's at some point in time been named Coach of the Year. So you take them all, whether he's out in the Mountain West or he's in the Pac-10 or in the NFL with the Carolina Panthers. Wherever he's been, at some point in time, he's Coach of the Year. That's how good he is. And it's been year after year. It's decades and decades, 3 decades. Just told me he's been married for 36 years, I think he said.
That's
Just had
correct.
a new PR last week. He's got kids and he's got grandkids. And I know summer's busy for Joe. So I go, Joe, man, what do you got going on this summer? And he's like, well, let me tell you. And it's like the President of the United States flying around the country, all around the South, making the magic happen, whether he's at NSCA Nationals or tactical or shoot, man, he's everywhere. He's everywhere. But so my all in this world speaker, he's written 3 books, he's edged digital courses, you name it. Joe, if you got drafted today in this year's draft, and I watch those guys going on the stage with all their fancy suits and the pants that are too short, wearing no socks, blah blah blah. What's your walkout song when you walk out on stage?
First of all, I would have chose to stay home with family. Number one.
Okay.
So I'd probably have done. I don't know if I would have had as big a party as Shadur Sanders, but and just remember, when I was coming out, it was a 12-round draft, and I still didn't get drafted. So I'm glad I didn't have that party. But I want to go back to. I appreciate the impressive intro, but just remember this: the one thing about team sports and individual awards, none of that happens without the athletes first and foremost, and then your staff. I mean, I was very fortunate that everywhere I went, we assembled some people that I was more than honored to work with. They didn't work for me. Sometimes they probably felt that way, but I always felt like we worked together. We all had a role. My role was to hopefully mentor and develop leaders. I don't think leaders' ultimate goal is to have a tremendous amount of followers. I think it's your goal to develop and mentor leaders. And I feel with the amount of former staff members that are in leadership roles, whether it's still in college coaching or coaching in general or in the world today, I think I can hold my hat on that and be more proud about that than all the trophies and the plaques that sit behind me for what I call propaganda showing. But again, I appreciate you guys having me on. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Yeah, every running back does well because all the lines open up holes, right?
Well, there's something to be said about that. And again, I like anybody else, I was out with my cousin this weekend. He sent me some pictures when I blew my knee out when I was in college, and I was classified a medical reject coming out of college. So even if I wanted to play, which I did, I wasn't going to. And I saw that picture he sent me when I was still in the hospital. And back then, you blew out your ACL or your MCL. It's kind of like an Achilles in this era. It's like, oh, it's taboo. And you're in a full-length cast and you're sitting there, and I'm not going to lie to you, first thing out of my first thoughts were like, damn, I'm going to have to graduate college now and get a real job. Luckily for me, I love the weight room, and at that point in time, strength and conditioning was actually becoming a field that I could choose, and I turned a passion and something I love doing till this day into a career where I've never worked a day in my life. So it's been a hell of a run.
That's beautiful. It's interesting you said you wouldn't even be at the draft. Sadly, I'm from Cleveland, so it means I love the Browns. And so one of my favorite players, though, was Joe Thomas. He was a left tackle, and he didn't even go to the draft. He was fishing with his dad. Yeah, from Wisconsin. And it's that blue-collar, grounded mentality of, hey, I'm just going to go to work when I'm called. So I'm going to enjoy this time with my family and then go to work. So I appreciate that. So, but even if you did get drafted, like if you had to line up your favorite meal with all your family and friends, What's that going to look like, Joe?
Oh, well, for me, it probably been a 6 foot hero from Nunzi's Deli and some Sicilian pizza from uh, Janie Strains over at Chiano's down the street, and then some good Carvel ice cream down the street on Sheridan Boulevard. That would have probably been what we had. Maybe some good Boar's Head hot dog with some hot cabbage and some spicy deli mustard on top.
Mm,
That's probably what you'd have got from us.
beautiful. Well, I know Lucas had some questions for you right off the bat.
Yeah, so for me, I'm pretty excited about this because I've only been in a professional job for really 5 years, 5 6 years, but I've gone through my college and gone through internships and whatnot, and where it all started for me was when I started learning how to do programming and learning how to put workouts together. My strength coach in college, who was one of my teachers, pulled up um, athletic based strength and strength training. And I'm sure you probably get asked this all the time or whatever, but that PDF, that course, that manual was a whole, basically a semester worth of, not necessarily a semester, but it was a couple weeks worth of lessons. And that is essentially where I learned how to program and design workouts and start a strength and conditioning career based off of, that's where I kind of was able to take off in my career, I guess, was utilizing that. And, uh, you said earlier, you said athletes first. I took, you know, what I've developed for myself. I kind of took that and, I say meet them where they're at, especially for where I'm at. I'm working the high school setting. So,
Yeah.
I meet all my athletes where they're at year in, year out. So athletes first, obviously, but, why and when, how did you come up with that? When did you come up with that? What was the reason for it?
Well, you guys wanted stories, so I'm going to give you a story. So, uh, when I first started, at that point in time, there wasn't an internet. Obviously, there wasn't cell phones. I had one of the first Apple or Mac computers, the little 4-inch screen ones that was a single unit floppy disk.
Yep.
And, the biggest thing you tried to do was reach out to coaches and ask for summer manuals. That was big back then because not a lot of people stayed to summer like they do now. So you'd send a letter out back there, snail mail. So you had to type a letter on a typewriter. There wasn't, we were still learning how to use computers, so to speak. And you'd send out and you just pretty much roll the dice. You might not hear from anybody and you might hear from somebody. And the first two people out at this point in time, I had graduated college and I got married and I was working at a high school in Florida, Pinecrest Prep. And I was their strength coach, O line coach, D line coach, head wrestling coach. I did all that stuff at the high school level. And more importantly, I was a dorm parent. So I got to live for free, eat for free, have free phone, and have free cable. Not a bad way to start out your first 2 years of marriage. Living 7 miles from the old Fort Lauderdale Strip. So yeah, it was a good way to start life. And so I was fortunate enough that the two coaches right away that sent me stuff, and I sent out a lot and probably only got a handful left, but was Mike Gentry, who was at Virginia Tech at the time, and John Gamble, who was at the University of Virginia. If you're a powerlifting fan, you guys will all remember, or you women will remember John Gamble as one of the best powerlifters of all time at the 275-pound class. I remember playing against Virginia and being out in the huddle and would not hear to play because I'd be staring at the sidelines, looking at the size of John Dunn and John Gamble and realizing where their linemen were way bigger than out we were. So, and then Mike Gentry at that point in time had already started to become a legend in the Southeast in strength and conditioning. So I learned a lot from those guys, and those were back in the day where uh, a little bit of the philosophy that back there was you either a 4 day a week free weight guy where you did, a hybrid version of a powerlifting type of program with a couple of Olympic lifts on the front end of your lower body sessions. And then you were either a high intensity based strength coach, which was the pretty much all machines, pretty naughtless at that time. And you did one set to failure 3 times a week or 2 times a week. And a lot of teams were having success with both systems. I mean, Mike Gittleson and John Thomas and Chet Furman and those guys at Penn State, Dan Riley with the Redskins. I mean, Dan Riley won 3 Super Bowls doing one set to failure. So I had been exposed to HIT because that's how we were trained in college, but we had a little bit of a hybrid because of the coaching changes that wanted to do certain Olympic lifts and variations, so to speak. So I had a good diversity coming out of college. And once I knew I wanted to be a strength coach, I started formulating my own path a little bit there. But again, no real understanding of programming. So I reached out. I had what we had at Wake, and these coaches came in. So I kind of modeled things really close to what Mike Gentry and John Gamble were doing, because those two guys were, one, I played against John Gamble. He coached against when I played. And like I said, Mike Gentry was a legend down there at East Carolina, then going to Virginia Tech. So when I first got into the high school realm, we did a traditional 4-day-a-week, lower body, upper body, with a little bit of Olympic lifting, not much because I wasn't really dialed in, because back then, even though we had them written into our program in college, when your strength coach is a HIT coach, you're not doing Olympic lifts, whether it's written, whether the coaches want it on the card or not. I tell people to this day, I may have done hang clean 5 times in 5 years, and it was on my card my entire career. And then when we started doing overhead jerks, when we were asked how to do it, when we asked our coach how to do it, and nothing against Joey, I loved him. I loved him till the day he passed, man. We were great friends all the way through. He said, hey, watch the superstars on Channel 7, and then when they do the jerk, just do what they do. So that's kind of how our introduction to Olympic lifting. So by the time I got to college, my first job at Boise State, I was, again, like anything else, I knew what I know. At that time, I knew what I knew, and I knew what I didn't know. And so there was a lot of things. Obviously, Olympic lifting was crucial at that point in time. It was big in strength and conditioning at the college level. So I had to learn that. Fortunately for me, when I moved to Boise in Meridian, Idaho, Mike Conroy, who was one of the top USA high school weightlifting coaches of all time, I think he still is, but back then he was big time USA weightlifting coach. He went to Boise State. He came and taught me Olympic lifting. So I got really, really fortunate there. But as I'm going through the process, the strength coach at the time, Ron Thompson, pretty much handed me the entire Olympic sports package and gave me carte blanche to do what I want, which kind of threw me off, because I was like, shoot, I really don't really know what I'm really doing. And back then, let's just face it, and this is the way it was back then. There wasn't a lot of people on staff. It was the head strength coach, and I was the GA serving as an assistant. That was it. And that was common in the early 90s as this field was just growing. If you saw a school with a full-time assistant strength coach, that was like, whoo, that big time. Like, they got a full-time assistant. So I went and met with the women's basketball coach at the time. And now, back then in the 90s, Stanford basketball is what Gino Auriemma and UConn are today, and what Tennessee was the generation before that. But in the 90s, it was Stanford women's hoops. And our basketball coach came from Stanford. So she had a high expectation of what she was hoping for at Boise State. But she had gone through a couple of GAs at this time, and now I walk in, an ex-football player, and here she goes, probably thinking, here we go again, right? Old football program. So when I first meet with her and sit down, like anything else, it's their team. First thing you learn as a strength coach, or the first thing that a qualified strength coach should teach their staff is, regardless of what our goals and what we hope to be what's right is, it's their team. And you have to be conscientious of that if you want to be successful. You can be called God's gift to the weight room, but when you walk into that coach's office, you're their assistant. And that's not going to change. You have to accept that. You just got to be well prepared and have enough ammunition, so to speak, that when you go in there, you are understanding of what's going to happen, and you have a plan of attack that you get what you would like to get, and they get what they would like to get. So at this point in time, like I said, I know what I know, and I damn sure know what I don't know. Now I go tell people I know what I know, I know what I don't know, I know what I need to know, and now I'm old enough to say, and I know what I don't care to know. And with all the BS that's going on in training today, there's several things that I don't really need to care to know because although I think it's important for everyone to learn and study, I'm going to invest my time in studying the things that I need to know rather than what I don't care to know to continue to build on what we've been able to accomplish. So during this meeting, and this was one of the very first meetings we had, she didn't say it like an attack mode, if that makes sense. Because sometimes you know how coaches can just
Be
drop the
accusatory.
hammer on you.
Yeah.
And pretty much she just went and passed and goes, man, I'm just getting tired of getting the old football programs. And I just, sitting there and I'm taking notes and she's got her running test that she wants to do and how we're going to implement it and where my role was in that. And then what days they would come in the weight room and all that other stuff. And so I went back and it kind of resonated with me, to be honest with you. I said, she's not really wrong, right? Like, and at that point, and I still to this day don't believe in sport specific weightlifting. I think there's movement specifics to athleticism. And then you put in a little tweaks and turns in your accessory work to make it look like it's sports specific. So I went to work, and like I said, I was very fortunate that Coach Thompson trusted me in this process because generally you go to a school and they give you the old programs and say, this is how we write a program and this is how we do it. And I'll be honest with you, that's how I did it when I ran college programs. Here's the tier system. This is how all the teams are going to train that work under our department. And I believe in that. And then what my goal is from there is to teach you all the other modalities so that when you go out on your own, you have at least a forward thinking to decide what is the best way for you to love what you do and show that passion to your coaches instead of regurgitating something because someone told you what's going on. And that still happens till this day. Like, I don't think there's enough independent and free thinking going on in strength and conditioning. So I kind of looked at certain things. I looked at what we were doing with football. And one of the things that resonated with me was, why are we lifting these teams 4 days a week? I understood the football to a point, but, as a HIT strength coach, we only lifted 3 days a week at college. So 3 days a week did not bother me one bit. And then, especially with women's basketball or women's volleyball or gymnastics or men's tennis or all the track and field was lifting 3 days a week. And they had, at that time, one of the best United States track coaches in the world that time. Ed Jacoby was one of the biggest jump coaches in the history of USA track and field. So I'm like, you know what, man, I'm going to build this program on a 3 day a week model. So then I start going, okay, what do I know? What do I like? What I did like about HIT, and it resonates to me to this day, and it gets like, to me, just general common sense. If you think this way, it makes sense. So I don't understand why enough people don't think this way. So if you look at high intensity, yes, it could be considered body part specific, so to speak, the way they do it. But if you look at a session, they're going to train the entire body from toe to head to toe. I mean, there wasn't a day that we didn't start off with neck. Like, to me, it amazes me how many teams do not train neck when that's how we started every single session started out. I can tell you the Nautilus. You go in, you start. It was max 15 to failure. Seated shrug. Seated Nautilus shrug. Then you went to Nautilus four-way neck. Then you went to Nautilus rear delt, and then you went to the old Nautilus manual rotary. 3 days a week, every day. And then you went all the way down to negative chins and dips and calf raises or heel raises. Again, then when hammer strength came out, they came out with a dorsiflexion machine. So that resonated with me because what is athletics? Athletics is whole body, total body movements. So you look at it from that standpoint and you're like, all right, how do you come up with a whole body so-called persona? But I wanted to do real lifting. Like, I didn't want to just do all machines. I liked the big lifts, and I did feel at that time for different reasons than I do now, there was merit in the Olympic lifts. So then I looked at it from a standpoint of how do I look at different things as far as building this whole body persona into these sessions. So at that point in time, I started classifying movements, and I changed the things as I learned more down the road. But at this point, I had three categories: explosive strength, which was all of my Olympic variations, lower body strength, we all know what those are, and upper body strength. And then the goal was to build programs around those three categories. Then the next thing was, from a cycling standpoint, was the heavy, moderate, light principle, where one day was heavy, one day was moderate, one day was light. Well, that is flawed. That's a flawed system because generally, depending on how the program was written, the only day that really had substantiation as far as a good quality amount of work was the moderate day. Because if you train the exercises like they asked you to do in the same exact order, where fast, allegedly explosive exercises first, lower body supplemental second, upper body supplemental third, well, the first exercise of the day is always going to be your best exercise before fatigue accumulates. So if you're going to do 85%, 5 sets of clean squat bench all in one day, that's not going to win. You're not winning that day. And then if you do the same session at 65%, back then before we understood intention of movement, dynamic effort method, rate of force development, that day was too easy. But the 75% day was probably the day you acquired everything you'd want. So right off the bat, I looked at it from, and this is a lot of it. I read this book after I developed this system. A lot of it is what I tell people now is if you study Bill Starr's The Strongest Style Survive, the tier system is a similar programming just on steroids, so to speak. It just took that program, which again, I read it after I created it. I was like, okay, Bill Starr wrote this. Definitely just made me even more confident in continuing this path. And so for me, it became, how do you make all the sessions moderate based off of this first three exercise rotation? Well, if you start rotating these exercises so that now when you're training athletes, right, you have your core, or what I started calling your foundational lifts. And back at that day, it was a hang clean, a squat, and a bench. We had secondary front squat, incline snatch, or a jerk, but for the most part, your big three across the board in the 90s was a hang clean or power clean, back squat, and bench press. Well, to me, I looked at that, well, if those are the most important things that we want to test, like those were what now people call KPIs or metrics, then they need to be done first. It has nothing to do with what fast exercises first. And then when you look at the metabolic demands of athletes that are in team sports, what's the most important critical thing that coaches say? I don't want my kids tired in the fourth quarter. Or my tennis players have to be capable to dominate a fifth set. Or my volleyball players have to be able to dominate a fifth set. Well, generally, when you're dealing with these types of sports, there's an explosive component to most of their movements. Well, if I keep on going in the elicitation of program design that was derivative from weightlifting, I'm always going to train explosive movements first. How am I going to know if these people can maintain some level of explosiveness under fatigue? So that's when I started rotating these explosive exercises throughout the tiered to give an ancillary approach to doing explosive type movements under fatigue. And that's kind of the premise of how it all got started. And then I got lucky because I had all these athletes at Boise State and I had 8 full years to put it into play. I think that was the one good thing about some of my journey. I was very fortunate. Out of the 5 major jobs I had, I was able to stay at 3 of them 7 years or more. So I was able to see things through. So that gave me more justification to know that this is sustainable. And then the more people like yourself or all these other coaches across the country who started jumping the bandwagon have proven that the template is sustainable. And now it's, then I didn't expect things to morph the way they did. And next thing you know, the tier system is a worldwide model of training. And I just was fortunate enough to roll the dice, bet on myself, and not necessarily just go with the flow, which a lot of people do.
Well, that's it's a huge answer, and that's awesome. And honestly, like the tier system is, for me personally, it just allowed me to be able to take that and create a foundation for basically my career when it comes to designing programs and making you know workouts for athletes and stuff like that. But it's allowed me to build off that and go to, maybe I want to try this 4-day, and what can I take from the 3-day and put into the 4-day? Okay, what I do now with my athletes at the squad workout, we train 5 days in the weight room. What can I take from the tier system, and how can I mold that into a 5-day program for high school kids, and make that suitable for 35-minute programs? And
I've had those conversations, and that's the one great thing about what I say in those situations. The tier system is, you look at it from the standpoint of everything's based off 3 exercises. So if you want to do, so say for example, and I'm just speaking off the hoof. If I'm on one of those types of school schedules where I've got 35 minutes, I'm probably figuring out a 3x3 on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and doing tier 4 and 5 work on Tuesday, Thursday. I mean, these are things that make it easy. Or if I only have 2 days a week, I always tell people, if I train 2 days a week, I'm going to win on a 3-day whole body program versus a 4-day split, because you're going to train 1 lower body session and 1 upper body session, but I'm going to train 2 whole body sessions.
Yep.
So there's a lot of things you can do. And that's the big thing. Like I tell people, my ultimate goal was to present something that has a little bit uniqueness to what people were being told at the time. And here's another story about that. I would have never been in this position that I was in if it wasn't for my best friend, Rich Gray, who was working for me at the time at Boise State. And if you might know this name because you're wearing a USA weightlifting shirt, Harvey Newton, who was one of America's best weightlifting coaches. He was actually the executive director at the NSCA when I submitted the article, my first article in 1997 on the tier system to the NSCA. Well, it got shot down for numerous reasons. The biggest one being that my peer-reviewed people, who none of them were coaches, so peer-reviewed is a hogwash for a coach. People who've never coached are not peers. They're somebody else's peers. They're not mine. And the big thing was, you can't snatch after a squat or an incline, or you can't do this after this or this. And I was like, I knew it. These guys are NSCA, hard-headedness. They got their books. They got all these hot shots we're reading all their books, and this is the way they train because they all came from Olympic backgrounds.
Yeah.
Mike Stones of the world, Fleck, Kramer, all those guys came from Olympic lifting backgrounds. I'm coming from being a meathead football player who loved the weight room and a HIT at that bat. So the exact opposite way they got into it, I got into it the exact opposite way. And so my buddy Rich did a internship at the USOC at the time when that was a big deal coming up as a strength coach. So he knew Harvey, and he called Harvey and said, look, man, he's not going to send this stuff back in. I don't know what to do. And here's Harvey Newton again. Remember, one of the elite weightlifting people in the history of the United States told Rich, tell him to do what they want and suck it up. People need to see what he's doing. And that kind of resonated with me, as did at the time Tom Cross, who was the head strength coach at Tulsa at the time and spent numerous years later at Mid-American Nazarene. He was a huge Olympic weightlifter, and I met him at Dwight Dobbs, what we call Mountain West at the time before the conference. We had this mountain regional conference down at Utah every year, and I first presented on a grease board the template of the tier system, and Tom Cross, another 100%. He wrote his programs for the kids like an Olympic weightlifting coach was like, hey, that's a pretty cool concept. So when you start getting these Olympic weightlifting coaches to kind of give you a little attaboy, like, hey, you're on to something, it builds confidence. And it's no different than what our number one goal is in the weight room when we train kids. It's not transferable strength, it's build confidence. If you can get these kids confident and teach them competent technique, the rest is up to the skill coach and the position coach to turn them into a player. So it just gravitates to this position that I'm in. But again, like I said, everybody's got a story, and it takes more than one person to be here talking to you today. And I can assure you, there's too many to name for me to be where I stand today. And I've been fortunate that I've been able to, like I said, been doing this for a long time and really have yet to really work. So it's been a good ride.
Earlier you mentioned BS in training. I'm just curious, what's this BS? Some of the BS that's going on in training today. I'm just curious, get your thoughts on that.
Well, I think we have too many coaches who are writing programs to build their reputations rather than care for the athletes, especially those who have become too technologically driven. You can't coach off an iPad and tell me, oh, my guy moved the bar at 0.9 meters per second today with awful corrosive technique. And then you have these non-transferable traits. Don't tell me your kid cleans 300 pounds and his vertical jumps 15 inches. I can pretty much tell you it really probably wasn't a clean. So these are just a couple of things off the top of my head. I think we've got to be quite aware that technology is here to stay. I embrace technology because I coach a high-level strongman, and we just had a monster deadlift session today, and a lot of how we evaluated the session was based off of his VBT scores. And again, I rock the boat. We look at max velocity over average all the way up to the point where we get to maximal loads, because then the average tells me when it's time to shut it down. But we don't shut stuff down. We use that data to see what kind of condition we're in, and we look at this data to see how well they can perform under duress. So one of my biggest pet peeves with some of the technology that's out there now with the velocity-based training is these computer programs that automatically adjust the athlete's load if they go under this prescribed number that's really a general number that we're using that, for lack of a better term, most data is based off somebody's group, right? You have a control group, so in the end, if I research 100 of my athletes and then that data is published, that 100 athletes' scores really doesn't resonate with the world. It resonates with the scores of those 100 athletes for the team that they were on. So we have to be conscientiously aware that these charts that everybody is like living and dying off them are just a guide. And the biggest thing is, for me, is where I go with maximal velocity or peak velocity, because there is no guide. Drive the bar as fast as you can for the desired amount of reps, and then let's see where the apples fall from the tree. Where that number starts to drop, where it drops in the duration of the sets. But we're leaning so much on technology that we're forgetting that one of the biggest reasons we're having issues in professional sports are the athletes don't work hard enough, and it's not their fault. Remember, athletes do what they're told to do. Doesn't matter what level. They do what they're told to do. And they're going to do it to the best of their abilities, but they're also going to do what they're told. So if a machine tells me to drop 30 pounds, I'm going to drop the 30 pounds. But here's what I'll tell you. Let's just say me and Jim are playing each other in football. Jim's a D lineman and he weighs 280. I'm an O lineman and I weigh 280. At some point in time, I'm going to fatigue and slow down, right? Now that machine's going to tell me if I'm squatting, well, that reduced the weight 30 pounds. Well, here's what I'll tell you. When I'm tired, Jim's not losing 30 pounds when he breaks the huddle.
No.
That's common sense.
Yes.
What I need to know is I need to know how that athlete drops off to know what his conditioning levels are or what her conditioning levels are. And again, this is not, I reserve the right to be wrong, but this, if you think about it again, from that approach, a practical approach, what happens in the game, this is what the anecdotal evidence or the anecdotal research that people think is not responsive to what we should be training. But that's where I've decided a long time ago. Evidence-based research is what my evidence says in my training hall. It's not what somebody in another training hall does, or more importantly, a research-based article that came from training phys ed kids that are in a college 100 level lifting class. And again, that research is definitely needed for general population and health. But a good friend of mine at the time, Matt Ray, who did a lot of work with me and who's one of the most astounded researchers in strength conditioning, realized that later in his career, where I kept telling him, until you can do research with my model, with my clientele athletes or the types of people I train, your research is negligible to me. And then he started collecting research with athletes and realized, hey, if you want numbers for athletes, you got to get research with athletes.
There's a number of points there. One, I'm not saying you lucked out, but I'm saying it's really fortunate that you had some coaches or mentors that allowed you the leeway to fail, to go in your own direction. I've seen assistant coaches at the college level where the head strength coach says, "Hey, this is the way it is. This is the way it is." I've heard a strength coach recently saying, "Hey, don't you think that at some point it's all just going to gravitate towards this one system, and the one system I'm running right now they're going to find out that, hey, this is the best system, and this is really the only one. And if you're not doing it exactly like this, you're just going to be kind of flat out off."
Well, if that was the case, we'd all have done the Nebraska system. Let's face it, right? Or bigger, faster, stronger. And the one thing I'll say to when you say that is, and that's become a problem with the way some of these strength coaches get hired, because that head guy, this is the way we do it. And because of that, when that offensive coordinator gets a job, he hires one of those assistants, takes them with him because he wants that program. But the problem is that assistant isn't really understands how and why that program works. And a lot of times those coaches come from bigger schools and get a tiered down job. So remember, if I coach at Ohio State and Alabama, nothing against those strength coaches. That's the creme de la creme. Georgia, you're getting all 5-star athletes. There's a way you can train them and be successful. But
Sure.
If you take that same way down to Bowling Green, it's not going to work.
True.
There's entire
But
coaching
what happens
trees.
is that coach doesn't know any better, so they're like, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. And these kids, I call everybody kid because they're mostly older than everybody now, but we're not doing a good enough job of teaching. And that's one thing that I will say that I prided myself on is I told my guys, I'm going to teach you everything I know, but at the end, you got to figure it out when it's your turn, because you got to be able to believe in your heart the same way I believe in my heart. And what happens is some people resignate and believe, like I've done a lot of ways, I'm a full-blown tier system guy. But like you said, I know guys who they float out a 4-day a week or 3-day a week, if depending on the phase of training and or the amount of running. See, everything I did was based off of running too. You got to spend more time on the field than you do in a weight room to be successful in athletics. So there's only so much you can do. Also, you got to understand the human condition. If I know back in the day when we did, those crazy conditioning sessions and like, oh, I still got to go in the weight room, something gives. If I like the weight room, I'm not running hard. If I don't like the weight room, I'm a skill guy, I'm running hard and I don't care about the weight room. Well,
Sure.
My thing was the days I condition, they ain't going to have to lift. And if they do, as we learned later with Louis Simmons, they do an extra workout. So it'd be gun show or extra,
Sure.
fluff work. So this is the evolution of a lot. Again, I've been very fortunate that I power lifted. I've been around great Olympic weightlifters, and now I'm around strongman and see how certain things from that sport I could have utilized in athletics. I don't want to say that I am a fan of CrossFit, but I'm a fan of elite CrossFitters and
Sure.
what they've shown the human body can adapt to when we've been told that a large majority of what they accomplish at the CrossFit Games should never be a human should never be able to do.
Sure.
And just like how you watch these strongmen who, when I worked with Brian Shaw for 2 years. Brian worked for me in 2005 at Arizona State. I saw where he came from, and when he first started strongman, if you deadlifted 850, you were the man. You deadlift 850 now, you ain't getting no points.
Right.
If you ain't deadlifting 1,000 or in that 950 to 1,050, there's still some of these elite guys. But if you're not in that 1,000-pound range, you're SOL, man. I mean, it's just bad news. Then you watch some of these crazy high volume snatch ladders, clean and jerk ladders that 135-pound women and 185-pound men do. That stuff like that resonates with me when it comes to metabolic demands and conditioning systems to athletes across the board.
We had Tom Berry on from Westside, and Tom said he mostly worked with athletes that were, not the non-power lifters. I'm not saying powerlifters aren't athletes. And Louis most with the powerlifters. And when Louis was working with Tom, because these athletes, they have all these other components, like you said, conditioning, etc. And they kind of just looked at each other and they said, we probably have to go to 3 days a week, to your point, because they're at 4. The other point that I think is important, and my mom's a math teacher, so we would always say there's algebra people and geometry people. And an algebra person is just someone that solves for X. They just plug and chug, they're robotic, they don't think, they just solve, right? Here's your formula, here's your SOP, you do it exactly how it's written, and that's it. Geometry people, you have to usually prove something, they give you some data, and you just figure it out. So when you take VBT or your Whoop or your Aura Ring or everything else, and you're like, well, this data says this data says this, and I said, yeah, it does. So now what? What are our parameters? How do we apply it? And how do we apply it in this situation given these other parameters? Because the parameters at the college level is different than the high school level and the pro level, and it's male or female and the different sports. So how do we apply it? How do we think? And if you're just a plug and chug guy, you're going to have one set of answers. And if you're a geometry person where you can solve the problem however you want, you're going to have a lot of answers. And when you have that feedback loop, we said you're at these places for 7+ years, you can implement your philosophies, take this data, you have your feedback loop, and say, well, here's how we're adjusting it next year. Lucas already told us in our last episode, hey, this incoming freshman, they're less sophisticated in the weight room than last year's freshmen. We got to meet them where they are and do these different things.
That will continue, and until something changes, that's going to continue.
Right. So the point is, like, you're going to take this data, and if you're just robotic, your people are going to achieve, but they're going to underachieve. They're not going to push any parameters, right? They're not going to be able to apply anything. There's no evolution. They're saying, hey, here you have X, that means Y and Z.
Well, here's a simple thing. Again, like I said, I try to resonate with anecdotal evidence and common sense. And then things that I've researched on my own with either N=1 or with these high-level athletes that I've been able to pass some of this information on to. But again, this is no fault to anybody else. It's just, again, one of the things that I think you asked me, like one of the things about learning, I think the reason I don't want, I guess you could say success, or why I've been able to be as fortunate as I have, is because I've always been someone kind of like you said, a problem solver, but I talk about reading between the lines. There's a reason why most papers have a space in between each line, because people who are really trying to figure things out are going to look in between those lines. Just like when I first studied Westside. Yeah. When I first studied Westside, everybody was trying to figure out, how did I work it into a 3-day-a-week program and get what I needed out of it? Because I took what I needed and also realized that there were certain things that were being done that they're not telling us. and
Right.
and it comes down through that. Just like when Louis brought up brought in velocity-based training, so to speak, with the dynamic effort, I still say whoever was the first person to start attaching the velocity-based work towards the max effort work, I wish I could shake their hand, because there's a lot of things that I missed the way I trained college athletes with that data would have been astounding to have. But what I've learned now when I talk more about peak velocity is there is no set parameter to that peak. I do know this. If you train for peak, this is from my people at the Jayhawk Performance Lab who are looking at some of my data. It does increase force by a large percentage. But also what it's going to do is it's going to drive the average of your lifts at the same load, because your intent mentally is different than the word average versus peak versus as fast as you can versus a general name, number, or range. So,
Sure.
And here's what I tell people now that have gotten so ridiculous with technology. Let's look at it this from now with what people are doing in their linear and lateral speed programs, or what they're doing in their field work, okay? So what's the big things now? Max velocity, right? Max acceleration, and fastest miles per hour. But we're going to get bombarded as strength coaches. Well, these exercises, we don't need to do these anymore. They don't do this, they don't do that. Well, that's because we're not training them with the same intent that we're doing things on the field. The things that you want to train with the movements is transferable traits. Is there certain things a squat is going to transfer to all sports and all positions? Yes and no, but more so your lineman than any other position, or a rugby scrum or something like that. There's certain specific movements, but the truth is this: how does it make any sense in this day and age if we're going to go crazy and put all these stuff on boards about max velocity, max acceleration, and hey, Jim ran 23.1 miles per hour today, one time in 60 practice plays. We didn't come in and say, Jim averaged 17.29 miles per hour today in practice. So then why are we training average velocities or looking at average velocities in the weight room?
Right.
So to me, it's the same thing of, if we're looking at trying to build similarities and to bring some type of transferable traits from generic or general specific athletic traits such as lifting weights or programmed agility or routes on air, why aren't we looking at it from the same perspective? I mean, hey, we're going to train today at 0.5 average, and if I don't hit 0.5, I'm going to drop the weight a certain percentage based off the score you got. Well, what happens if you're doing multiple sets of 2 and the guy just has a bad rep? That's going to happen. Yeah. So now he automatically gets dropped 30 pounds because the machine says so? What if I jump in his face and say, hey, bro, let's go? And then the next set's his best set because the coach jumped him. So there's a lot of things I think we're missing. And the biggest thing is emotional quotient. We are human beings. Emotion, the ability to motivate, is never not going to be important in sports. Doesn't matter where you go with AI. Everybody thinks, AI is going to take over. Now, there might be a time where AI can be as humanistic as it can, but if you don't have heart and you don't understand what that feeling of heart means, it's going to be hard to have some type of emotional attachment to helping somebody succeed.
I agree with that 100%. There's times, even specifically, I'll be lifting and I'm not taking a set off, but I kind of am. I'm not as intentional. And my teammate or even my wife, who's good at correcting me, she's like, hey, let's not fuck around here. Talk about this, though. You mentioned about confidence and how that translates. And, there's the main lifts that have a lot of correlation to success, but I can talk about kids that are, hey, maybe you don't need big arms to play your sport, but maybe you just feel a little bit better. And I got to tell you, maybe you don't even need huge arms to play a lot in football as much as something else. But I got to tell you, when you get hit in the arm with a helmet, you don't want a little arm. So
there's merit for arm farms now. They ain't not a week that we ain't done an arm farm. I can tell you that.
Which is great, but also, just them feeling, hey, I ran a little bit faster, I'm a little bit stronger, I'm moving. I came in as a freshman, I was 205 linebacker, now I'm a 230 linebacker. I'm squatting 500. Before I was squatting 285. Just you feel more capable.
Well,
You feel like
what about the
you can
kid
handle
who
the
can't
load.
do a push up and does a push up, or the
Right.
kid who can't do a pull up, but now he can hold his chin over the bar for 30 seconds? It's small steps, like you said. I mean, to me, it's not even about how much someone lifts; it's where they started. Like my oldest son was a freak in the weight room. The first day he was in the weight room, he could do a full range of motion Nordic leg curl up and down.
Wow.
So and could do a 60-second chin up hold and climb a rope and do a glute ham raise. My youngest son, the exact opposite, couldn't hold his chin over the bar for 5 seconds. Now he's 260 pounds and can do 15 dead hang pull ups. So, which to me is his biggest accomplishment outside of getting a track scholarship and throwing far. But to me, that might be the biggest athletic accomplishment that he's done in his career. So those are things that I think are more important sometimes than where what you've done. Oh, I squatted 500. Yeah, but can you do a pistol squat? I can't. I benched over 400. I did a 440 two fingers on the smooth closed grip bench press. I did a 415 regular bench press and a 425 regular bench press, a 415 reverse grip bench press in college, and my max chin ups was 5. If you would have told me, hey man, you can do 10 chin ups and bench 365, I probably wouldn't be having major rotator cuff surgery 18 weeks on this one and having this one done in October. So there's a lot of things I think, you know, uh, yeah, I squatted 625 pounds in college. Got no shot at doing a pistol squat.
Gotcha.
I mean, there's just and even back then, uh, couldn't really do a lunge with 95 pounds because everything was double leg bilateral work. We weren't doing unilateral lifts, and that's why for me, the unilateral complex of lunge matrices, step up matrices, single leg squat matrices, all these things. There's just the exercise pool to a very good qualified strength coach is so large. You should always be able to rotate your like tier 4 and 5 and 3 exercises, and even at the point now with all the specialty bars and stuff like that, you can grow a program where these kids can cycle through a program for 2 years, but because every few weeks it changes, it's not like the old so-called, when I first came up, they would tell you you had 3 years to get a guy strong and then they were done, but that's because they trained the same program for 5 years. And so, after, like anything else, once they adapted, it was over. Well, when we
Hmm.
started figuring that out, and then starting leveling things up, and you had your block 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, our guys improved every single year, and so did our women athletes. So again, there's a lot to be said about getting strong, what that means to the athlete, what ways you get strong. I think there was one point where I used to tell people, like you can never be strong enough, right? That was a big deal. But the truth is, in certain numbers, again, this isn't team sports. In strength sports, you can never be strong enough.
Right.
1 pound more is always better than 0 pounds more. But the truth of the matter is, if Lucas was playing football for me and he misses a 315 bench press on Wednesday and has 20 tackles on Friday night, nobody cares.
Right.
And vice versa. If he hit
Yeah.
315 for 10 and had 2 tackles, guess what? Nobody cares. So those are things that as a team sports strength coach, it's a little bit different where the relativeness of strength is, if you told me back in the day that offensive lineman had to bench 405, I'd probably agree with you. Now, honestly, 365. If an athlete can, because I need to get them stronger in a lot of different ways. And what we've all learned, and me recently, but even now, even more so, and I started doing this later in my college career, we made the first year and a half, the overhead press was the foundation lift for a lot of reasons. One, it was more conducive to athletics. Your feet are on the ground in a standing position, the core stabilization, the overhead stability of the shoulder strength. And what we find out now, dealing with these better athletes, you get your overhead press stronger, your bench press will go up. You get your bench press stronger, your overhead press isn't going up. So what do I want to do? I want to do stuff that gets things to go up. So you just continue, like I said, you continue to learn things, and you learn what you need to continue to figure things out. And that's the one thing that I've learned. Like when Brian asked me to come onto his team officially, he was chasing the fifth world strongest man title. And I tell people all the time, the pressure to train a strength athlete, an individual strength athlete, to me was just as great as the stress and strain of trying to get a team to a Super Bowl.
Sure.
Because in that realm, you're trying to keep them strong enough for 26 weeks. Because if you go to now it might be longer now, but if you start week 1 of the preseason when I was in the NFL to the time we went to the Super Bowl, that's 26 weeks that you've got to have high-level preparation. But like I said, there could be days where Jim only lifts once a week. There could be a week where Lucas doesn't lift at all because he's just too beat up, and treatment supersedes the weight room. Because at the end of the day, his production on Sunday matters, and we've got to make sure that gas tank is filled as close as it can to full on Sunday. But in Brian's case, if he misses a strength workout, we're in trouble. Because now, if he misses a rep in the weight room, that rep in competition could cost him anywhere between 1 and 4 or 5 points.
Let me ask you about Brian.
Sure.
And I used to, well, like I said, I was a state chair, so I had done some strongman stuff, and nothing like Brian's level. I didn't really start doing group training and then CrossFit in my late 30s. Didn't really start lifting till I was 40, and I think it's great. I had a great time. I had some okay numbers, like 300-pound per hand farmer's carry and a
Nice.
800 yoke. So for me, it was great. I love everything about it. And then I like Olympic sports. I like watching CrossFit. I like watching powerlifting. I like throwing. I like Highland Games. I like strongman. So I'm watching Brian, and on the static strength stuff, he's right there. Top 2 or 3 guys in the world. But it seems like he will get beat in the moving events. He's pretty heavy, and maybe not get beat, but like he wouldn't score as well, and overall his points. So my question then would be, well, if he's pulling 1100, he's right there with Thor and everybody else. Is he strong enough there where he can maintain that and then pull up his weak link of his moving events?
I think what you got to remember, when he came up, it was different. It got more athletic.
It did.
And some of it, and again, I don't want to speak for Brian, but he saw strongman, and if you watch how he runs his event, he's testing who the strongest man on earth is, not who the strongest athlete on earth is.
Yeah. Totally different, right?
And so for him, I think there were times where I would have loved to, not even in the 2 years that I worked, but maybe he should have played the game a little different for certain events. But he only went to 2 events towards the end of his career, and obviously World's Strongest Man being one of them because that's the title. But I think I don't want to, I hate to speak for him because I love him, but I think sometimes guys like that get stubborn.
Sure.
And they didn't want to adapt where certain guys adapted. And on top of that, let's face it, he was 10 years older than most of these guys.
Sure.
I mean, these guys, like the year that I coached him, he came in 4th place. And the 2 years I coached him, we came in 4th and 7th for various reasons. But the first year he came in 4th place, the first 3 guys ahead of him were all former World's Strongest Man champions, and every one of them was at least 10 years younger than him.
Right.
So
that's a lot of miles. That's a lot of miles. That's a lot of reps. A lot of pain on your body.
Yeah, and he had tore his hamstring pretty bad several times at the Arnold.
Yep.
So there was a lot of things going on, but you see guys like Tom Stoltman. He's another 400-pounder, but younger, well athletic. Reminds a lot of people of Brian back when Brian first started.
Right.
When Brian first started, he's 370, 380 pounds right off the basketball court almost.
Yeah, he was a basketball kid.
He used to wreck those guys on some of those athletic drills. And still, if you took his weight and his time and compared it to others, it's just a matter of, but like you said, if you're going for time and you come in 10th, you only get 1 point.
Yes, that hurts you.
No matter what your time is. So yeah, I think there's some guys now that are in the same case. Like it's like you'll see now a lot of these guys who do Brian's meet that did World's Strongest Man. They're playing the diet game. They go in a little lighter for World's Strongest Man, and
Sure.
now they're going in heavier for Brian's event because it's 8 events and 7 of them are static events almost.
It's not the strongest that survived or the smartest. It's the one that adapted the best.
Yeah,
Right. That's what
yeah,
Darwin
a lot
said.
of that, right? Again, just like what Louis says a lot of times, and this is where I just did a chart. I just did a small course on Prilipin's chart, and Louis would talk about train optimally, and then would always bring up the optimal rep ranges in Prilipin's chart. And yes, for Olympic weightlifters, that chart, the optimal side, may have a lot of value. But what I'm going to tell you in sports, the high side has more value to us as optimal. Like instead of doing, like if you say you're doing doubles at 80%, you got 5 sets of 2 is the low end, 8 sets of 2 is the middle end, and then 10 sets of 2 is the high end. Well, I need to do 10 sets of 2 if I'm an offensive lineman.
Your sport has more reps than just 2.
Yes. So those are where I tell people, again, the conception of optimal is based off of what you're the athlete you're training, not what someone says is optimal, because they're training a different athlete that has different parameters. Like again, in powerlifting, if you're a high level athlete, you can do 5 sets of 2 because you're going to make that up in your accessory work. If you're a beginner, you can do 8 sets of 2 because you need more reps under the competition lift.
Yeah.
So these are things that, again, get brought up based off of what your sport is and how things adapt towards that sport. And we've always got to remember that when you coach a strength disciplined athlete, or what I call a strength athlete, their practice field is the weight room.
Yeah.
So they can spend 3 hours in a weight room because they don't have nothing else to do that day. What we've got to remember a lot of times, especially in season with an athlete, is they're walking off a 2-hour practice, or now the rules have changed, so they're walking off a 2-hour practice and they still got to lift weights. And we have to understand that and accept that. And even if they lift before practice, we still got to remember they still got to practice. But my strength athlete, when he starts his session, that's practice.
Right. That's him.
Now, when I make him condition at the end, he doesn't like that because that doesn't feel like practice. But when you got 8 events in 2 days, or you're at the World's Strongest Man and you got 10 events over 4 days, your ass needs to be in shape. I don't care what type of athlete you are. You have to be in condition.
Let me ask you this, completely unrelated. You've been around different college and pro teams. Which fans are the most fun to watch be crazy in the stands?
Again, I played in the ACC when Clemson had Danny Ford. There's a different, what's the right word? It's a different fanatic, the college groups, and again, I've never played in an SEC stadium, but like when you hear about the LSUs of the world or the Georgia Bulldogs or Alabama, it's just different. Those people, they take it, the alum, the people in town who have embraced that team as their own.
Part of their identity.
It's a little bit different. But I will tell you this, when we had it rolling with the Panthers, that was a pretty close. That year we went to the Super Bowl and we're on a magical run. That was about as close as I've seen a pro stadium outside of like Green Bay, because Green Bay, it's that smaller community. Like you literally drive through a neighborhood to get to the stadium. That's a little bit different type of fan. I would say when we played the Raiders at the old Oakland Coliseum, when it was, that fan is a little bit more fanatical. Yeah. But on the whole, college sports is just such more different embracement of the support that they get. People truly, there's something to that, especially from an alumni standpoint. Like, you can resonate with the pro team, but if you ever play for that pro team, you don't. It's the pro
Yeah.
team. But if you went to, LSU, Wake Forest, Alabama, UNLV, you automatically have some pride. And that's one thing I will say that I notice more in the NFL than any other conference. The guys who played at SEC teams and their loyalty to their colleges compared to some of the other schools. No, the Ohio State guys with us, but like as a conference as a whole, that SEC has got to be something special because I just saw the way those kids talked about their time at their places and when they played other schools, it was just different.
It was different. Is there a place where you're like, oh man, the weather up there in the winter or the weather down there in the heat, you're like, oh, that's god awful.
Well, I've seen a little bit of both. Here's what I'll tell you. A lot of times you don't realize what you're going through until you leave. Like, I lived in Arizona and Phoenix for 7 years, probably one of the hottest cities in the United States, year round. Like, it was hot, hotter, or hotterist. There was no real downtime, so to speak. You could walk, and again, dry heat is heat. Like, the only difference is how much you sweat. But when you walk out, 4 o'clock in the morning to head to summer workouts in Phoenix and it hits you like you're walking into a sauna, that ain't fun. Or you can
Nope.
talk to any one of my assistants and interns who trained in my garage on Saturdays and Sundays at 120 degrees and I didn't put in no fan. That's not like you could literally. I lived across the street from a park. We would be done training, take our shirts off, put them on the car, walk around the park, and they'd be beat dry. You could literally, like, when you hear people talk about cook an egg off the blacktop, you could do that in Phoenix in the summer.
Mm.
And you don't realize, like, you think you're getting acclimated to it until you go somewhere else. When I went to Louisville and went through 4 seasons, I didn't realize how much fatigue and stress that 7 years did to me. Also, from a mental standpoint, because the weight room we trained out of was 2 floors deep. So unless we were out at the field, we were in a building with no windows. And that was the only time in my career I trained in a weight room with no windows. And there's certain things, like I remember when I got to Louisville, my assistant, Ben Hilgert, took over from me. And the first thing I called him, I said, look, man, about a month later, not right away, I said, make sure you get out more. We didn't get out enough. It's a big difference getting outside. I don't care how, just get outside. And so I think there's, but like when you're there, you don't think about like when I left there, I could say, okay, now I know why people would negatively recruit against us with the heat.
For
When
sure.
you're there, you're thinking it's a benefit, but it really isn't a benefit. It's hard to get acclimated. And again, at the end of the day, if everything's equal, the team with the best athlete is going to win.
Man, you talk about not having any windows. We the high school I'm at, we don't have any windows in my weight room.
Go out, get outside as much as you can.
Man, I started taking the kids out more often to just do warm-ups, and they would hate it because it'd be kind of hot. It's hot, whatever. It's sunny, it's nice, and I looked at the assistant I work with, and I was like, "Hey, I'm bringing them out here for me. I'm not bringing them out here to get them out here. They got windows in class. I'm bringing them out here because I need to see the sun. Because if you're not, you're in that thing."
There was times again, like I said, there could have been some times where we wouldn't even know what was going on outside.
Oh yeah.
With World's Strongest Man venues, like these are the biggest boys around, packed on with muscle and fat. And they're doing it in like Africa, they're in the desert or Dubai or someplace stupid. And I'm like, why are they doing that? Why can't they put
even here, we've been in Myrtle Beach.
Oh, yeah. I got
Bradenton, Florida, and Sacramento, California. And let me tell you, it was hot in Sacramento this year. And in Myrtle Beach, obviously, it was hot. In May, it's hot.
We had a local event here just to qualify, and I don't know if you know this one guy's name's Dimitar, and excellent strongman, excellent overhead presser, and he's sitting down, and Mark Felix was there too. I always wanted to meet Mark.
I got to meet him because he's one of my, I don't want to say idol, just somebody that I have the utmost respect for, him and Nick Best, because they're in my age bracket and to what they're able to do. I always say those guys are the special ones,
Yeah.
and a lot of, and I said, but like I said, I think who I am and what my journey is. I think there's a lot of people that can resonate with me as an inspiration for what I've trained around and still try to train to be as strong as I can today. It might not be as strong as I was 10 years ago, a day ago,
Sure.
20 years ago, but my goal is the heaviest amount that I can lift, I'm going to try to lift. What that number becomes, it doesn't really matter because every day's a PR. Like today was 58 years old, 7 months and 2 day PR today, right? Like
Right. That's the deal.
it's always something.
These events though, they got these guys on oxygen and
Oh yeah.
it's day one. Hey, when you're training, what do you listen to?
I listen to sports radio. That tells you where I'm at in my training. Now I will say there are, if and when the time's needed, I'll probably listen to rap music.
All right.
I used to. I'm from New York, Long Island, man. I got exposed to everything. My dad was a doorman at one of the biggest clubs on Long Island. So back in the disco era, he'd bring back 8-track tapes of the DJ's disco. So, and then when I was in high school, that's junior high schools when rap became big in Long Island and New York with Run DMC, LL Cool
Yep.
J. The Sugar Hill Gang came up, African Bambaataa, and the Soul Sonic Force. Yeah. Then I also came up a big Led Zeppelin fan.
Oh,
I got all their albums downstairs in my box. So yeah,
probably my
I'm
favorite.
diverse, but right now I am. I listen to sports radio. That's how I get my knowledge for what I need to do.
So no traveling, no kids, no grandkids, no dogs, no pets, no fish, no whatever. It's you and your wife to go to some place you haven't been yet. Where would you
Yeah.
guys like to go?
So my wife's been begging me for years, and because of the job and because of who I am, it just never happened. And 2 years ago, I finally succumbed, and it was probably the best thing that I could have done. Where I didn't care about work, and we spent 2 weeks over in Venice and
All that Italian food.
Capri and Rome. So
Mm.
we are planning our next trip. I don't know where it's going to be, but we are going to go overseas. It was again well needed. I enjoyed it. She loves it. She'll go overseas. She went to Sardinia for a month this year, France for 10 days, London for 10 days. So now I gotta get on board with her, and we've got to do another trip. But that's something that I don't necessarily have regrets. It's just the way life transpired for me and what my goals were and how I wanted to make sure that my family was cared for. I always wanted them to be able to do whatever they wanted, and I didn't mind work. I don't mind working.
Yep.
So, but she earned it and deserved it, and probably was way too long before that actually happened. So we are trying to do a better job. Although, like I said, I am on the road a lot, but I have to do that better. And we're talking about where we're going to plan our next big excursion.
Favorite sports movie?
I like the Rocky series. I
Right.
can go with Rocky. I
Yeah, for sure.
like Blue Chips.
Yeah.
I like the other one with the kid with the pig with John Voight's the coach. Varsity Blues.
Oh yeah,
I like the program because that was in my era.
Alvin Mack.
But the Rock, I mean, you can't go wrong. Even the Creed movies I can go with, but like you can't go wrong with Rockies. I mean, Rocky
Iconic.
3 with Clubber. I mean, the first two, but Clubber Lang was cool. Drago was cool.
Yep.
The Rocky 5, probably the worst one of the series, and I'll include the Creeds on those too.
Yeah.
I actually like the Creed. I like Balboa a lot,
Yep.
but the Rocky trilogy is my best sports. And then because I like those series, I love the Fast and Furious franchise too. So those
Super
are kind
fun.
of things that I can watch the same stuff over and over again. So I'm cool.
So you like
Favorite sport to watch?
So yeah, this was one of your deals. You're gonna laugh, man. I love watching lifting. Like I love it. Like always have. One of the reasons why I didn't coach football. I mean, I've had several coaches ask, "Hey, man, we thinking about would you think about coaching D line or O line? I go, I didn't like watching tape when I played, probably why I wasn't good enough. And I damn sure ain't watching tape if I'm not playing. And but I'll watch YouTube. I'll watch YouTube all day long, lifting, watching people lift. So I like all the strength sport, all of them. Like it doesn't matter if it's something on. I just, like to me, not growing up in the sport of weightlifting, but you watch a male or female athlete do a qualified clean or snatch. That's just something to be said about how precise and how smooth and fluid that someone could make that type of load look. I mean, and then obviously now with the strongman stuff, it's really getting to be more a part of who I am now that I'm coaching more with those guys and being around that inside that sport in depth with the highest levels. That's really taken a new turn for me. It's given me the capabilities to continue to train people at a very high level. I like training elite athletes. I love training 10-year-olds. I love training women athletes, but as again, the wisdom and the things you learn, which is outside the X's and O's of coaches, are good when you're dealing with adults, 28, 29, 30. They've got life experiences too. You can help guide them through their way of life. So yeah, I love the lifting stuff. Always have, but not like I do now. Like I am infatuated with it. My wife will tell you that. I don't do anything but, what's my hobby? Lift weights. What do you read? Books on lifting weights. Like you asked me, I think, what's my favorite books? I like Muscle and Fitness and Old Powerlifting USA. You can't find it no more. And then when it comes to studying and leadership, I like all of Patro Lenciani's work. I think it's some of the best stuff you can read. It's easy read and it's easy applicable to any coach's position.
Luke, it looked like you had a question.
We're good. Go ahead. We're fine.
Well, Joe, I wrote a book on building athletes, and it's on all 6 things, and then we talk about 3 for the head and 3 for the body, and I'll send you one.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
And there's lifting in there, but there's also, mindset and building up allies, not looking for your friends to be your teammates, but you want allies that'll hold you accountable. And
Yep.
how do you find, if you were to build the whole team to get you to be at your highest level, how would you do it? And this is my best shot at it. I like how you wrote Lyle Alzado as your favorite athlete, and being from Cleveland, he had ties to the Browns, he had ties to the Raiders, and
Yeah.
I watched documentaries on that guy. Intense. You want to talk about max velocity on everything in his life? Everything.
So he went to my high school, and he was a few years younger than my dad. So my dad knew him real well. My high school coach knew him great because they all played at Lawrence. I got to actually train with Lyle a few times at the old Jack Lane in Lawrence off of Cedarhurst Avenue he literally was living in Inwood at the time when he got traded from the Browns to the Raiders. And he said you wanted stories. Well, it's funny you bring it up. So I'm playing intramural softball at PS number 2, the elementary school in Inwood, and Lyle pulls up in a 2-seated Mercedes convertible at the stop sign and comes out and tells me he just got traded to the Raiders.
No kidding.
Yep.
Dang. Wow. That dude was intense.
So here's the thing.
I never met him. All I know is what you see on TV. So you don't really know.
So here's the thing again, this is where somebody does what they believe to be right and then takes a beating for it. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to sit here. I don't necessarily agree with the fact that he thinks that the steroids gave him the brain cancer. I don't. And again, there's no proof that it did. I'm not saying he was probably an abuser of steroids. And in that era, it wasn't hard to do. But what I will tell you is I was in the weight room. No one worked like that. And from what I heard, that's how he was before he was on steroids, when he was in high school. A fanatical worker, but if you know a lot about his past and how he was brought up, he pretty much had to be if he wanted any shot at getting out of Inwood or Lawrence for that matter. And the other thing was what people don't see but they see it sometimes is what kind of heart he had, and I think a lot of it was from a hard upbringing. Always was a giver. You see something like if you talk to people from his Denver days, the charitable work, people don't, he won the awards for your most charitable person, and did a lot of things with Special Olympics, and always took time to be around the fans. Just a good guy. Again, it sucks the way he's perceived, because if you look at stat books, right? Remember, he played an era where they didn't really log stats, but there is on one of the pro football things, they have a list of like the sack leaders, and then those who played at the eras that they didn't record sacks, how many they would have. He had over 100 career sacks in his career. So people don't give him enough credit. You look at some of these guys in the Hall of Fame, you're like, he probably had a Hall of Fame career, is never going to be. He doesn't even get spoken like that, and that's a little disappointing. But again, he did things that people believed to be taboo. He spoke out about it, and it got taken for him. It got proved that he was a cheat. Well, I can guarantee you, like some of these other guys who come out and he wasn't the only one. He was just
Right.
the one that got sick and believed that was part of what got him his sickness. So, but super good guy. I wore 77 in college because of him, and like I said, treated me great. Uh, was a fan. He gave me good advice after I blew my knee out, as he had come through a similar issue back in his career. Luckily for him, it happened while he was in the NFL, and mine happened to be while I was in college. But yeah, just and he personified what people from Inwood were all about: just hardworking, tough son of a bitches.
What's your favorite lift?
For me, it's the deadlift because it's the only one I can do now, still in competition. Can't get the squat depth. My shoulders are shot. Although this shoulder, the one I got repaired was my first day of doing compound movements with it. I like the way this one feels because now it feels better than the one that hasn't been repaired. So at least I know whatever they did's working. But like I've already, like I'm gonna, I've always was a fan of reverse grip, and I got hooked onto that with the Barbarian Brothers back in the '80s and '90s when I was coming up. So I just heard, golly, I keep forgetting his name. The guy who has the biggest bench assisted with uh, what's his name? He's benched like
Off?
1,300 pounds. No, I think this guy's more of a bench press specialist. I just saw a thing where he was talking about using the reverse grip bench for shoulder health and how it allows you to pack the lats and keep the elbow inside the wrist a lot more conducively and biomechanically more friendly to the shoulder health. And I was going to do that anyway. So, yeah, I'm going to play around with the reverse grip bench press a little bit when I get 100% healthy. I have a couple of minor goals that I want to kick around as I still try to chase this phenomenon called be the strongest I'll survive. I'm going to try to be as strong as I can until I can't be strong at all. And so, yeah, I got a couple of more things left there. But the deadlift right now is just something that has been user friendly with my physical limitations. Again, I used to be able to switch back and forth pretty close to both maxes of conventional sumo. Now I'm pretty much a pure sumo, although I'm going to probably, if I can get healthy enough, do a deadlift with a conventional because all my guys in strongman give me a hard time because coach these strongman athletes, but then I do sumo deadlifting. But,
Do
I'm also getting to that point where, yeah, well, it's all you guys who are doing jerks in strongman, that's like cheating too, instead of doing a push press. But that's a controversy I'll roll up here soon enough on social media.
with you working in strongman, you I personally like Atlas stones quite a bit. It's from back in the day, from hundreds of years ago, picking up a manhood stone over in Scotland or Iceland or England, And so I have some manhood stones here for Indiana, and people have done, and I write their names down in this leather book, and I offer them a shot
Nice.
of bourbon if they pick the stone up to their chest, and here's your shot of bourbon, So um, those are Atlas stones are probably one of my favorite lifts,
Yeah,
and
my stone game was horrible. Man, I'm not. Yeah, and again, I guess when they're your worst event, you should train it the hardest. I do have a very much high level respect for those who can pick up the natural stones.
yeah, when
There's
you watch
something to
Mateus,
it. Yes, I
that
mean
is
that's
so
just
impressive.
something.
Where he'll get 4 or 5 reps, where everybody else is getting
Yeah. Well,
0 or 1.
then some of the things like if you follow Martin Lises and he's doing that strength unknown and he goes over to these different countries, that stuff there. And one thing you learn about strongman is there's a reason why those guys are strongmen because they're just strong.
Yeah,
Like I'm weight room strong. Like if I'm not training, I'm going to get weak fast. Those dudes, man, it's like the gazelles and the lions and the tigers in the jungle. They wake up ready to kill, right? They wake up ready they always say, ain't nobody warming up in the jungle. Well, I trained today and it took me, I don't call it warming up, I call it preparation, but it took me 45 minutes to get to where I was going. Like
same as me.
it's
Yep.
just crazy. But I mean, that training's training. It just looks different.
You got a quote for us or no?
I have a more of a mantra. I use the mantra "words win." It's means the word is win, not necessarily words. Words and actions play. But and I pretty much stole that mantra from Dennis Erickson when he came to coach at Arizona State because he was very conscientious to let us know the only thing that matters is winning. So the word is win, but we broke out every practice as words win. So it kind of rolls off the tongue. And I work with several other coaches that you're trying to build this mission and this philosophy of doing right what's when someone's not looking, and are you a character or do you have character? There's different ways to look at. So I took a lot of the concepts I had learned from other people and have built this philosophy about like what words win means, right action, right speech, do the right thing when no one's looking, the positivity versus negativity actions. Like always try to look at what's been accomplished versus what you didn't accomplish. Because if you look deep enough within yourself, there's probably millions of people. I mean, that's probably, but there's probably a lot of people that wish they could accomplish certain things you did. Like I wanted to go to the NFL. I got hurt early. I wind up but I started 22 games in Division I college football. There's a lot of people I know that would love to say that they started 22 games in Division I football. I talk to these guys when they get to NFL camps. I go, I used to tell them, I wish I got cut. And they go, what does that mean? That means I was there. And I'd
Right.
rather have been there and got cut than not get there at all.
Sure.
So so that's kind of how
The perspective.
Brian uses be great as his mantra. And my mantra is words win. And it's words win moments, like having the opportunity to share my story today with you guys on your podcast. That's a words win moment. I get to hopefully spark some interest in people to get themselves motivated to do something they were unwilling to do. Let's see, an hour and 28 minutes and 51 seconds ago.
Well, Joe, I know you're at bighousepower.com. It's the same deal on Instagram, X, 58-year-old on TikTok. You got it. And you got your own YouTube channel. Joe, it was great having you on. Shout out Chad Coy. He's one of our guests and friend of mine
That's
and
he helps us
colleague.
with he helps us with my events with my athletes. He's my event coach, my event professional.
I was
And
just
I
talking
actually I coached Chad, so it's that's the only strongman meet I ever did. 2009 Central USA, and I'm the Masters champ.
Ooh.
You can't see it. I got the trophy still up there on the
Was
board.
Chad in the same event?
No, he was young, man. Chad was running it, so he had to blow the whistle.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, man, Joe, great having you on.
I appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Thank you for the gift of your time. Hang on here for a minute once we're done. For those that are getting hold of us, info@athlete-builder.com, website athlete-builder.com. Send us questions. Send us thoughts. Check us out for our book, our workbook, our digital course, and other people that have been on the show. So again, Joe, great having you. Lucas, thanks for teeing us off. And it was a good time. We were looking forward to this episode. I'm glad it happened. Thanks so much.
Me too. Thank you.
All right. Best.
Thanks, Joe.